Alright, hey, it's 92 Jelani. Today I want to do a video kind of going over the Verbos Sequence Selector. I've had a couple of people on Reddit ask me about the Verbos Sequence Selector, and I saw someone recently actually ask a question on Reddit saying like, hey, what's a sequencer that's like the Buchla Music Easel sequencer, and the sequence selector is, in my opinion, the obvious choice. So I'm going to go over the sequence selector, kind of show how I use it, how you can use it. I mean, it's a utility module. But yeah, I'm going to go over that. And I'm only going to use 3 modules today, the sequence selector and 2 voltage multistages. Honestly, the sequence selector is really a companion to the voltage multistage. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so I have a skiff here with a sequence selector and 2 voltage multistages. I'm going to use this voltage multistage as an oscillator. If you've seen my previous video about how to use sequencers as oscillators, essentially I'm just going to run this at audio rate, and I'll use the time CV input as a pitch control, because that's what pitch is. And I'll use the Coma field kit as my mixer, just going into my audio interface. So yeah, let's get into this. To start off, the sequence selector doesn't have an internal clock like most sequencers do, but you just drive it with the advance input. So the button right here you can use to advance from each stage. So like with the voltage multistage, you can just push start and it will run. You can change the time, but that's not the case with the sequence selector. You have to have an external gate source driving the clock. So let's use the voltage multistage as gate output to drive the sequence selector. I can use a shorter cable. So now we have the sequence selector running in sync with the voltage multistage. The individual sliders here control, of course, the voltage coming out of the CV output, and we'll use the voltage multistage as the oscillator, like I said. So let me just start that up and take the gate output going into the mixer. And the the field kit has a tone control, so you can kind of use it as a tilt EQ, so it's not as harsh in the high ends. Now let's get the CV coming out of the sequence selector controlling the pitch of the voltage multistage. So that'll be the time CV input. So start back up. And now we can use the sliders to Okay, so you can kind of get the basic gist of how this section works. What's cool about the voltage multistage and the sequence selector in combination is that you can use the transpose input to modulate what's going on with this sequence that's going on right now. So let me start this back up again. So now with the transpose input, when I have the bands here activated, it'll modulate what's going on here. So and because this is a 8-step sequence and this is a 5-step sequence, it multiplies those two together to give you a longer variation of the rhythm or the sequence. So that's kind of how those two can work as a team. But yeah, it really gives you a much more diverse sequence that's going on. Another cool thing about the sequence selector is the sequential switching possibilities. It has two different rows that have 5 inputs, and as each stage is happening, it's moving from the input to input on a switch with 2 different outputs. So you have in tandem sequential switch going on for 2 different rows. So I guess I can use different outputs from the voltage multistage to have different waveforms selected for the output of the oscillator. So yeah, let's do that. I'll unpatch the gate output from the mixer, take the gate output into the first input for the A row, and then I'll take that output going into the mixer. And give some gain back. All right, so start it back up. Oh, start it back up, sorry. So we only get output now from when it passes over the first light, or the first input. So let's give it some other outputs from the voltage multistage so it can switch between those. So with the voltage multistage, for each step it has a decay envelope, which is a reference output, so we'll use that as another waveform. And then we have 2 lanes going on that we can have outputs from. So let's engage all the odd bands, if you want to call it that. And then on this one, I'll do all the even bands. So there's a total of 5 possible inputs, but I'm only using 4 of those. So let's shorten this sequence from a full 5-step to just a 3-step. To do that, I'll go to the top of the sequence selector, and you can take any of the output stages and patch it into the stage selections, which we have buttons here too, so we can just jump to that stage. So I'll get one of the stage outputs, patch it right into the stage select input. So going out of the 4th one, because after the 3rd gate, it'll hit the 4th one, triggering it back to the 1st. And use a short cable. So now we have a 3-stage loop. And stop it. So the next cool thing about the sequence selector is the gate outputs. As you're seeing, I'm using one of the gate outputs right now to toggle it from a 5-step sequence to a 3-step sequence. But there's also these switches that we have on the top of it right here. And with the switches, you can activate a different gate output sequencer. Well, its own gate output sequencer, but it's different from the one in the voltage multistage, because the voltage multistage's gate sequencer, you can control the length of it with the time knob, but with this one, the length is the maximum length of each stage. So in a way, it's like a on-off generator more so than a trigger generator. So if you have all the stages up, it's going to be a consistent 9-volt output. But if you let's say, only have 1 gauge, for the length of that stage, you'll have a continuous 9-volt output, which can be useful in some applications. Like, let's say I wanted to modulate the time of this sequencer with a different voltage level. So for stage 2, I'm going to get the gate output to slow the time down by 9 volts, and then I'll use the built-in attenuator to scale that back to something useful. So start that back up. Slow it down. So on the second stage, where it gets to the gate output, it'll slow it down rather than just singing a trigger, which is just useful information for if you want to patch with that. So let me make it a 5-step sequence again. Remember, there's no input on the 5th stage, so it's just skipping over that. Let's make it a 4-step. So I hope this kind of like gives a general overview of how you can use a sequence selector to turn the voltage multistage into a more complex modulation source. And if you have multiple voltage multistages, it just makes it exponentially more useful. Yeah, 92 Jelani. See you later.